have you met or do you have a lot of patients who use weed, who smoke weed?
Yes. In addition to my private practice, I do work in Baltimore with a substance abuse and behavioral health clinic. So we, not only do see patients for mental health, we also see patients who have comorbid diagnosis of substance abuse and mental health. So
What's comorbid?
comorbid is when they have two diagnoses, comorbidity. Sorry, the definition is not coming to mind right now, but essentially they have the diagnosis of mental health and a substance abuse issue, and they kind of feed into each other.
Yeah, they do.
Yeah, so a lot of the patients that we see run the gamut of substance abuse for opioids, heroin or prescription drugs, cocaine, marijuana,
How much of weed do you find?
Almost all.
All?
Almost all, yeah.
Wow. Do you find a lot of them that are strictly marijuana? Like it's not like they're going into other drugs. It's just weed that they're struggling with.
Yes.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And what kind of issues are they having, or what's usually going on with them?
So typically they try to use it as a way to self-medicate in a lot of times, and then it kind of, in most cases they say, well, I just take it to help me calm down or relax. In some cases that it's become severe or it's a cannabis use disorder, it's become, they're almost dependent on it, that they cannot stop, using it. So the DSM, if you meet 2 of the 11 criterias, you would qualify for a cannabis use disorder.
A cannabis use disorder?
Mm-hmm.
I've never heard of that in my life. What?
So it is a diagnosis in the DSM.
Okay.
In the previous version, there was broken into 2, either cannabis abuse disorder or cannabis dependence disorder. Now it's kind of combined into cannabis use disorder.
Why is it a disorder? What is that? Like, what is it?
So the criteria under that includes that it's taken in large amounts over a long period of time, persistent desire or unsuccessful attempts to cut down, long time to obtain or recover. So the person, it takes them a lot longer, that they're all consumed with trying to get it, using it, and a longer time to recover from use. Persistent craving. It leads to failure to fulfill major role obligations, home, school, work, all those areas. They are using despite persistent and recurrent social and interpersonal problems that they're facing. They reduce and withdraw from social, occupational, or recreational activities. They use in situations where it's physically hazardous for them to continue. They continue using despite knowing that they have a persistent or physical or a psychological problem that is made worse with them using. They develop a tolerance or a need for increased amounts over time that, smoking one is not enough. They used to need more and more to get the same effect. And experience severe withdrawal symptoms when they do try to stop, such as anxiety, irritability, depression, gastrointestinal problems, sleep disturbance. So these are the 11 criteria. So if you meet 2 of them and they've been occurring within the last 12 months, you meet the diagnostic criteria for cannabis use disorder.
Wow, I think a lot of the population would meet that criteria right there. Have you dealt with a lot of young adults that would go under this criteria right here?
Not with this, because our clinic usually sees people 18 and over, so I haven't worked with kids or anyone under 18 struggling with this.
Okay, because I know a lot of people that would go under that in the young adults, and one of the things I would say one of the myths about weed out there is that it's not addictive. And that's kind of what sold weed. It's like, oh, this is the best and safest drug you can do because it's not you're not going to be addicted to it like other drugs, so you'll be fine. That's not true at all. Everything you just said right there is completely true, and it's 100% factual. And there's a lot of people that meet all 11. You said 11 criteria. There's a lot of people that meet all 11 of those criteria that I know personally. So it's that's one of the things that I've wanted to debunk is this myth that weed isn't addictive. And
I mean, when you compare addictive levels of weed to heroin and cocaine, yeah, it would seem like weed is like it's, not as serious, but on its own, yes, it is. It can lead to, serious mental health issues.
And there was this recent study about weed-induced psychosis. I'm sure you're familiar with psychosis. So can you search up weed-induced psychosis? So there's studies coming out that after you stop smoking weed and if you are dependent on it, that you can actually turn into this state of psychosis and delusional state. And that's what makes it so difficult for people who smoke weed to stop, is because they're not I don't want to, but they're not medically psychotic people. So when they're on the weed, they feel normal, and then as soon as they stop, one of the withdrawal symptoms is going through a state of psychosis, so they feel psychotic. So they revert back to the weed because it makes them feel normal again.
Yeah, and sometimes it, like you said, it's self-medicating, so they may already be experiencing the psychosis, and the weed is masking it. So when they stop, it manifests.
Why do you think people use substances like weed? One of the things I found in life is that people who have anxiety, like when they're sober, right, use weed, and people who don't have anxiety get anxious off of weed and don't like it. Why do you think it is that people use weed or abuse weed in the first place, and why is it so popular with young people?
In terms of why, they can range from, wanting a quick fix to help with what they're feeling. So again, to self-medicate and not deal with the anxiety or whatever stress that they're going through. Another thing can be, especially with young people, is peer pressure and a need to fit in.
I mean, it's hard. I'll tell you that even my non-Muslim friends say this all the time, which is it's very difficult in this country to be sober, because if you look around, there's billboards that have Bud Light and Budweiser everywhere. Movies, all they talk about are drugs and psychedelics and weed and alcohol and women and pornography or action or just women in general are sold everywhere. So it's very difficult to live this Muslim lifestyle, right? Where it's where you're abstaining from sex outside of marriage, where you're not drinking alcohol, where you're not smoking weed, and so when you constantly have these elements that are constantly going everywhere you go, you're driving, you're living, it's just literally always desires. I mean, how do we as Muslims deal with this environment?
I would say support groups. Like the people that you surround yourself with. Peer pressure doesn't just affect young people, but adults as well. So, finding yourself in a situation where you have to act or do certain things in order to fit in with the people around you, for example. So kind of reevaluating that. Are the people around me or the people that I hang out with, are they good for my mental health? Do they encourage me to be a better version of myself? Or, am I just going along with what they do so that I am part of the group? I'm not seen as, weird or an outcast.
But that's difficult, right? Because once you leave your friend group, not only that's a difficult task within itself, is leaving a friend group altogether and kind of having that kind of breakup situation. and then going to find another one, I mean, it's very difficult, and I've tried it, and it's almost impossible, especially as you get older. As your circle kind of gets smaller, it's difficult to switch your environment. It becomes your life.
Mhm.
So how does someone psychologically deal with that?
By first knowing why they're doing this. Like, are they doing it for themselves, and putting themselves first, and the need to be around a more positive group of people, positive environment, taking themselves out of a toxic environment of friends or social groups that encourage them to engage in the very things that they're trying to abstain from. And it can be difficult, especially if that's, these are the friends that you're kind of saying where they accept you, and that's, you've been with them for years. It's hard to come to the realization and to make that decision. But ultimately, you need to put it in perspective. How is this affecting me, and is it a benefit, and what is the long-term effect on my health?
And it's difficult, especially with if you live a habited life of partying, especially in this country, where you go out every weekend. It's difficult to stop that. It's difficult to just completely switch your life into not going out every weekend and instead do something that's relatively boring. I mean, it can be not boring to people who weren't going out every weekend for their entire lives, but it is relatively boring for someone who has. And that leads us to kind of partying and drinking. Is when you party and drink, your relationship with those people is based off of just that action. And once you stop either drinking or partying or both, you lose that connection with those people. And that's very difficult and very scary for a lot of Muslims who are very used to this partying lifestyle to stop it, because it's the same question that a lot of people of Quraysh are the tribe of Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. Those people were also asking themselves the same question: will I leave my life and my family and my habits and ways and change all of that for this religion? And that's the same question that Muslims beg to ask themselves once they get into this partying lifestyle. Will I leave everything I know? Will I leave my friends? Will I leave the girls? Will I leave the partying? Will I leave the drinking and smoking and having fun for this religion? And that's a very difficult thing to deal with.
I mean, it's definitely identifying certain priorities in life, and again, Islam is a lifestyle, not just a religion, but also needing to be. I lost my train of thought on that. Sorry about that.
It's okay.
I was thinking as you were talking, but it's a sense of, again, priorities. Am I going to just follow the dunya? Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. Just follow the dunya and follow the desires.
What's dunya? Because people don't know what that means.
Sorry. Life and all the desires that the worldly life gives you, and think of the afterlife and the spiritual and the religious aspect of it.
It's so long term, right? That it's demanding such long term thinking that it's hard. It's hard, and I know a lot of I myself and a lot of my Muslim friends have struggled with it. It's like, how do I get myself out of this bubble of a reality and see the world picture, the bigger picture?